Hi, my name is Brian Hudson, and I'm just knocking together this short video having written a report into the link between the child maintenance service and parental suicide. So it's a really emotional topic, and it really needed to be uncovered. The service themselves, for those of you who have been involved, it would be no surprise that there's a definite link between their service and parental suicide. And I wanted to get into the detail of that, as the organisation itself has long denied that there is any link or that there's any evidence to prove that there is a link to suicide. Having had some personal experience of their service and the way that they treat people firsthand, who are often very vulnerable people, I became all the more motivated to look into their practices and to establish exactly what the link was between the organisation, the way that they behave, overzealous enforcement, and what that means at the back end of that, for parents that that are unable to pay. So I'll just quickly move on to the actual document that I've written, which I will post a link to along with this video, so you can read it in full if you want to. It's only 5 pages, it'll only take you 10 minutes. So the first version of this document I wrote really was off the back of having data provided by the Child Maintenance Service telling me it broke down how many deaths there were among the entire population of parents under CMS, and it split those between male and female, between paying parent and receiving parent. So I did a quick comparison of the mortality rate for those quite sizable populations. You're looking at over 400,000 parents who pay, and fewer than that who receive. So it's around about 750,000 or so in total parents. And immediately it was obvious that the mortality rate among parents that were receiving money was actually very slightly below what you would expect for the population of that age range. Now, according to the CMS own numbers, their own reporting, receiving parents are around about 94-95% female, and paying parents, of course, therefore are around 95 or so percent male. What we found there is that there were in a given year there were around about 500 excess deaths among the entire paying parent population. So that's bad enough, and it suggests that there's a problem that they are aware of. It doesn't take a lot of rocket science level mathematics to work out that there's a problem here. So before taking that too far, I wanted to get into some finer detail. So I asked them to provide me with some more information, and that information was really for them to tell me what was the total number of parental deaths within the paying parent population. Okay, so just ignore the side of their caseload, which is parents that receive money, and just look at only those who have died who were responsible for making payments. And then of those total number of deaths, how many of them had arrears in the month prior to their death being recorded? And that will make sense to you a little later when I take you through the report. I then wanted to know what was the total amount of arrears that was outstanding for all of those when you add up all of those who died with arrears. So the response came back. You can see that in this box here, and it confirmed that they had 4,390 paying parents that died in a 33-month period between September 2017 and June 2020. Now, they say that that represents 0.6% of the total number of paying parents. Now, on the face of it, that would look normal, because the mortality rate in the UK generally is about 0.6% of the population will die every year. The only thing is that you would expect, between the age ranges of 30 and 50, which would probably be the average, you would expect that to be far lower, because the majority of deaths occur as people get older, naturally. So the rate of death increases once people get to 65, 70, 75, 80 and so on. To see such a high level of mortality between an average age range of 30 to 50, which is typical male parenting age, where there's a separation, and therefore the requirements pay maintenance, that seems very high straight away. So I then asked them to tell me, of the paying parents, split those into two sections. So what you can see here is that they've said of the 4,390 paying parents, 2,860 were in arrears as of the month, the end of the month before they recorded their death, and the total arrears was 9.7 million, which on the face of it looks high, but when you split that down between 2,860 parents, it's just a few £1,000s each, less than £4,000, not even enough to pay for a funeral. So I've put the full letter. You can see there's a link here to the full letter that the CMS sent to me, confirming those figures. So once I've got that number, the first thing that I noted was, from the prior disclosure that they'd sent me, there was a massive increase. So the prior disclosure that they sent me was for 9 months previous to that. So it was still 33 months, but it went back to the beginning of January 2017 and only up to September 2019. So for there to have been such a huge spike, that brought it up from 3,270 deaths that you can see here up to the 4,390 deaths. That's a huge increase of 34% in that period of time. So whether they've just managed to find some extra deaths that they hadn't accounted for somehow in that period of time, or they've had a massive spike in the last year, 18 months, because they're getting ever increasingly more harsh with their enforcement, and where is that being targeted. So anyway, just to get back to breaking that data down, what I asked them to do was to tell me the number of deaths that were in just the parents who were in arrears. So they told us that 2,860 were in arrears. So then I had to set about calculating the number of parents that was. So the total number of parents that pay maintenance is down here. It's 435,900. But of that, looking at CMS's own data that they publish every quarter, I could determine that actually only 53,700 of those have arrears. It's about 12% of the total paying population at any one time will have arrears, and you can go into how I've worked that out by reading the full document. So what we can immediately see there is that only 12% of the population of paying parents are managing to generate 2/3 of the total mortality. So that's something that leapt out at me straight away when I read their letter, even before I did the maths. I couldn't have imagined it would be that bad, to be honest with you. But clearly that's what we're dealing with. Now, I don't know that it's precisely that figure because the CMS haven't given that figure to me. I had to work it out from the data that they have published on their that they publish quarterly in their reporting. So I think I'm pretty accurate. But even if I were wrong and totally wrong, and we were to look at the entire paying parent population, there are about 20 excess deaths in the portion of the paying parents that aren't in arrears. So we're still looking at an awful lot of excess deaths in the paying parent population. And it's still something that must be investigated, because there can't be any other factors that would lead to that level of additional mortality over and above what we would expect in the population normally. So if I come back further into this, and I've put it all into a table so it's a bit easier to understand, we can look at the total number of parents that have got arrears, as I mentioned before, is 53,700, and those without arrears is almost 400,000. You can see there, 382,000. Now, the number of deaths, quite clearly is disproportionately weighted to a much smaller subpopulation of parents who are in arrears. And if they're in arrears, they're in arrears for a reason, i.e. they are not able to pay. They are in financial difficulty, which isn't altogether surprising given they've very likely been through a traumatic family court experience. They're having to perhaps fund 2 places to live, one for them to live in, or one perhaps they're paying for their ex-partner and that property, and they're needing to double up on all the usual family expenses that you would expect. So it's not altogether surprising to find that there's a proportion of people that are having significant financial difficulty, and then you add on to that the child maintenance service with the way that they calculate being really inappropriate, and then the way that they enforce being even more so. So what I did then after these basic calculations was look at the number of annual deaths. So in the population of parents that have arrears, it's just over 1,000. So we've got 1,040 deaths. And that gives us an annual death rate per 100,000 of 1,937. And that's how death rates are normally calculated per 100,000. If you come down here, we've got the ONS figures, and that's how they calculate it. And we've got the chart here that you can look through that I'll go into in a moment. So what we would expect to see for a population group of that size and in that age range, we would expect to have seen there being 207 deaths in the period, in the 33-month period. So, but what we've seen is far, far more than that. So we've seen 2,653 too many deaths over and above the 207 that we should have been seeing. So that gives us an annual excess death rate of 965, just in the subpopulation of parents that have arrears. And then in the side where they haven't fallen into arrears, we can see that we've got just 21 excess deaths over the course of a year, and 59 over that 3-year period. So the total value, or the total proportion of those excess deaths is almost 98% attributable to the smaller population of parents who have fallen into financial difficulty. and had the might of the child maintenance service bearing down on them at that point where they're most likely in despair. So, we can really start to build out the picture as to what the causative effects are. Now, you can't say that it's all down to child maintenance service, but they will be playing a big part in that. And when you are behaving as a very much overzealous debt collector, using any means at your disposal to get money from your targets, and you are adding fees of up to 24% on top of what you say they owe, and very commonly there are errors in the amount that is claimed that is owed. That can be 3, 4, 5 times what the actual figures should be, with effectively a commission being added on top for the child maintenance service to profit from. It's not difficult to see how people that are in difficulty get to a position of complete despair. So if I come down here further, now using a calculation of 2.2 children per parent, we're talking about over a 33 period, nearly 6,000 children losing a parent, and going through the premature loss of that parent and the trauma that's associated with that. And of course not having any support from them for the rest of their life. It's not difficult to see how that could be, a precursor for the rest of their childhood being lived in poverty, on the basis that, a government institution has played a major part in driving their parent to suicide. So if we come down further, what we find when we analyse that data in more detail is that the rate of mortality is substantially higher than you would expect to find in the population in general. So where have we got that figure? So the apparent suicide rate that we're looking at is 173 times greater than we would expect for the highest risk group, according to the ONS figures for suicide. So, this isn't a conclusive report that says all of these people died from suicide, but it's difficult to see how they could have died from any other means, given that the difference is so stark when you compare it to the other subpopulations of parents under the child maintenance cases. So I then took a look at what the typical economic cost of a suicide is, and it's estimated that each suicide has an overall economic cost of 1.7 million, and there's a link at the bottom here so you can find the reference for that. So when you look at 2,653 of those, the total cost of all of those suicides is 4.5 billion. That's the total economic cost. And now in the same period of time where we've seen all of those suicides, or likely suicides, the CMS has overseen a total of 2.8 billion in maintenance payments, which is 40% less than the total economic cost of all of those suicides, which to me just seems completely barking mad, and suggests that you could literally do away with the child maintenance service, have the government pay the people maintenance for every single case, and the economy would be 40% better off as a result. I'm not suggesting that we do that, but it just seems completely insane for a government agency to be driving all these people to suicide in order to be claiming to be supporting children off the back of it, when plainly what they're doing is causing incredible pain for the people that have no alternative, feel they have no alternative but to resort to suicide. And that's before we even consider their children that they're leaving behind. Now, let's go back to the amount of money that was left in arrears, that they were in arrears the month before their death was recorded. And it breaks down, that 9.7 million breaks down to £3,656 each, which, wouldn't buy a decent funeral today. And this is what, this seems to be deemed appropriate to drive people to such despair over what is a relatively small amount of money. Now, I dare say that they've plundered those people's bank accounts long before they left those relatively small sums of arrears, and that's what's got them into such a desperate state. It's common practice for the Child Maintenance Service to simply reach into a bank account and clear it out, to deduct money from wages with an additional 20% fee added on top, and then charge the receiving parent 4% deducted from what they'll pay out. So, there's a considerable financial benefit for this organisation to plunder the finances of people who, plainly are unable to cope. Otherwise, they would not be in arrears in the first place, and they wouldn't be at such a heightened threat of suicide or risk of suicide. We can see that just by looking at these charts. So if we can look at this first chart here, and we compare the annual mortality rate. So what we have here, where it says 140, this is the rate that we would expect blended across the age ranges of 30 to 50, male 30 to 50, which is higher than you would expect to see in a female population. So I've adjusted these figures, to take into account that males die. The rate of death for males is higher than the rate of death for females of the same age. So anyway, 140, we compare that to the group of parents, which is 380,000 or so, who don't have arrears, and it's only marginally higher, 146 per 100,000. But in that very small group of 53,700 parents, the rate of death per 100,000 is staggering. I mean, it's almost 2,000 per 100,000. It's many, many multiples higher than what we would expect to see. And it's not reasonable for the Child Maintenance Service, the DWP, or for government to suggest that that is normal. It's plainly not normal, and there is plainly a link between ability to pay and the state of mental health that these parents that resort to suicide are pushed into on the basis that they're in despair. If we come across here, we can see, just how stark that is. We look at the total parents who don't have arrears, and what size of part of the pie, the proportion of the pie that they make up, compared to the 53,700 where all of the excess deaths are. And if we look down here, we're just splitting out the deaths among all of the paying parent population. So in spite of the fact that the proportion of the paying parent population who aren't in arrears is so much higher than the ones that are in arrears, this pie chart shows that the deaths among that smaller population dwarf those in the part of the population that haven't fallen into financial difficulty. And then we look at this last chart that shows us the where all of the excess deaths arise, and it really hits you in the face. It's not something that they could claim not to be able to see. Yet, since writing this, I have gone to the extremes of setting up a campaign website, and I have written to all of the every single MP. I've written to all of the mainstream media outlets with a press release and with a copy of the report. I've had an introduction video done at this website, which you can find at stopcmsdrivingsuicide.org. And I need your help, really. If we're going to have any hope at all of, putting a stop to these practices that are driving parents to take their own lives, I need your help. I can't do this on my own. So I put together this website here. You'll find lots of information here, but you'll also find a page here specifically on what I think we can do about it, and I've listed all the things that I think we need to do. So there's like an action plan here. You can link out to a petition that I'd like you to sign. If you can go to the change.org one, the Parliament have refused my application for a petition to Parliament, unsurprisingly, as part of the denial process. But if you go to more here, there's a section to capture information from anybody who might be at risk. There's at least 53,000 of you out there who are probably really struggling and probably have CMS on your case, and you're at a really high risk from that. But combine it also with what's going on with the pandemic, people being furloughed, losing their jobs and what have you, and very often being prevented from having access to their children when things are not in a pandemic, and COVID isn't being used as an excuse. So all the more so now, this subgroup of people are at real risk, 173 times elevated risk of suicide. So, if you feel that you fit into that bracket, I'm not specifically able to help you, but I want to, as part of this effort, I want to be able to capture your experiences and what's going on, and try to galvanise resources so that we can try to give some sort of support, and limit the damage here, and have you reach out to us and have that there's some people here that are trying to change this, before you feel that you're pushed beyond the point that you can cope with. So if you come to this page, if you feel you're at risk, just click the at-risk survey here and we'll capture that information from you. There are some links here as well to some other resources that you can tap into in the meantime. If you've lost a loved one, we're looking at 1,000 odd parents a year being lost, and those people will have parents, they'll have brothers, they'll have cousins and uncles and aunts, and children, adult children, who maybe lost a parent a number of years ago through this, and they look back and maybe they're even going through it themselves now. Maybe you've lost a friend or a colleague, whoever it was that was at least in part driven to take their own life as a result of the behaviour of this organisation. Then we really need to try and capture that information in a structured way so that it's possible to report off it, and present it as evidence, and reason for this organisation to be tackled for what can only be described as corporate manslaughter. Perhaps you'll see this video or read the report and you work for this organisation or a related organisation, and you've got information that could help us to tackle this. We really need you to come forward. So there's a page for whistleblowers, and there's a survey that you can access here where you can anonymously give us information, or you can provide details of who you are, but we certainly won't disclose who you are without your prior written approval of that. But we really need to get an inside view of what's going on, because it really can't be that this is an accident that just happens to have happened. This, from everything that I've seen, this is well known, and that it's happening, and to a large extent it's happening by design. So the other pages I've got here is, there's another page here with lots of information about how you can actually help. So there's some information about family law reform and the work that I'm doing with the Renew Party to go into the next election with a manifesto for family law reform. So you can read about that there and take part in the survey that is set up for that. If you are having difficulty with family law or domestic abuse, you can link out here to Mankind. If you need some help with either with child maintenance service issues or with child contact issues, you can reach out to Families Need Fathers. But also, you can write to your local MP. So if you see this link here, I've drafted a template letter that you can use. Just download that, edit it where you see fit, send it into your local MP. When they get letters from constituents, they have to act. When they get letters from me, they'll just tell me to write to my local MP. So it doesn't really help for me to do this work for you, but it really helps me if you will write to your local MP. And the same goes for your local newspaper. I've done another template letter, as you can see here. So just download that. It will take you 10 minutes. Send it by email, send it by post, send it by both, whichever. You can find your local MP's email address just by Googling it. It's really a matter of minutes of effort for you to do that. And then, the other thing that you can do is share this campaign with anybody at all that you can. There's a page here where I'm asking for the media to help. There seems to be a media blackout on this topic. I've done a press release. They're not responding. You would surely consider this to be a national scandal. I certainly consider it to be a national scandal, but I'm not getting response from the mainstream media at all. And without them, it's much more difficult to have the public informed on this, and that means that we're going to have to rely on each other to spread the word. So anything at all that you can do personally, or if you happen to know somebody who does work in the media who may have some influence, then then please do what you can to make sure that they're aware. And if they won't do anything with it, try and find out why not, and let me know why not. What are the barriers here? What hurdles do I need to jump over? I'm also reaching out to celebrities, and anybody that, there are plenty of celebrities that have been through family court drama, lost access to their kids, so they'll be sympathetic to this cause, and they've got lots of reach. That's the one thing they've got in common, is they have an audience, a fan base, who listen to them, that they can reach, with very little effort, so that through them perhaps we can spread the word. I've got some more reports that I've written here. If you'd like to read those, there's a number of reports, and anything new that I do, I will put in. I will add to this page, and there are a number that I'm working on now that expose more wrongdoing in the family law arena. If you have been falsely accused of anything, there's a survey here. When I say falsely accused, that's in the context of family court. So I'm gathering data from victims of false allegations in a family court setting, so that again, I can produce structured reporting about what those experiences are and what the common factors are, so that it's then easier to put forward solutions to those once we know exactly what the common factors are. And we can challenge the formal narratives of the industry, who will have financial vested interests, of course. Then there's a page detailing the work that we're doing with the family, with the Renew Party, so you can go there. And I'm reaching out to industry leaders. One of the things that really surprises me about this work that I've done is that, industry leaders, enterprise and business leaders, they don't really understand that they are ultimately the safety net to these people. When somebody is going through traumatic family court processes, or they are being, they're really struggling to keep up financially after a separation, and they have the child maintenance service on their case and behaving the way that they do, that naturally is going to affect that person at work. And without industry leaders and management understanding just how difficult that is for a member of their team, they may not be able to provide a safety net. The way that they respond to that could literally mean the difference between life and death. And for each of those that do resort to suicide, that there will be another 20 to 30 who are in severe distress. So we're not talking about a small number of people here. If you run a relatively small business and this hits one of your team, that can have a big impact on your entire organisation. And it's not unusual for entire businesses to fold. I've experienced that personally as a direct result of family law, family court processes, and this whole industry that feeds off it. So we really need to be able to reach out to industry leaders and have them understand what's going on here, and ask them for their help. That could be financial help, that could be resource help, but perhaps right now the biggest help that they could be is they can reach their staff with this message, and they can do that for us at no cost. It doesn't cost them anything, and it wouldn't cost us anything, and they might save 10, 15, 20, 50, 100, 200, 500 lives next year collectively if they did that, because the government aren't about to stop what they're doing or stop the CMS doing what they're doing anytime soon, given that they are ignoring this campaign so far. And what you can also do as industry leaders and business leaders is start pressurizing the government. So if you actually go to this page, there's a couple more template letters in here. You can use those to write to your MP as a business leader, write to the Minister for Business and tell them that you're not okay about this. This is government departments who are driving good people to suicide, and those good people probably were working in an enterprise, quite possibly a key person. They may have had their own business, who had staff, who had customers and suppliers, and here we have a government agency who are outright causing major problems, not just when it results in a suicide, but in the severe mental health distress that's caused on the runway to that, and also for the people that don't ultimately resort to that, but just perhaps have a breakdown and then recover, or very close to it, or have a lot of time off, and it's just fortunate that they've got a big or a decent support network around them that they've been able to lean on to get through it. But they shouldn't have to go through this in the first place, and that shouldn't be causing a problem for your business in the first place. So speak up. This is the way to be heard. I won't be heard on my own. So that's really everything that's in the site, and that's everything that I wanted to talk about in this video. I hope that you can find a way to help. Please use the resources that I've put in here. There's no funding behind this. I locked myself in a room and did this on my own using a website builder. If you're able to bring anything to the party, then reach out. If you can literally just spread the word. That would be wonderful. And follow what we're doing. And somehow, some way, we'll get a breakthrough. So thanks for listening. I know this is a long video, but it's an important topic. But thanks for paying attention. And hopefully there will be better news in future videos. Thanks.